spacious skies, for amber waves of grain.
Good morning, everyone. We'll go ahead and get started. A copy of the Open Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the legislative chambers. There's also an automatic external defibrillator that is available on the back wall of the legislative chambers. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll begin with the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Equalization. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle. Here. Commissioner Kavanaugh. Here. Commissioner Duda. Here. Commissioner Kraft. Here. Commissioner Morgan. Here. Commissioner Rogers. Here. Madam Chair.
Here. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Equalization meeting held Tuesday, December 5th, 2017. And item B, call for a meeting and set Tuesday, December 19th, 2017 as a date for hearing on certified assessment corrections reflecting the addition of omitted property to the tax rolls or increased value on property. Is there a motion to approve A and B? Second. Motion by Commissioner Kraft, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. No. Oh, Commissioner Boyle? Oh. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Yes? No, or what? You voted no, actually. You meant to vote yes? Okay. No. Commissioner Rogers voting yes. All others present voting yes. Motion passes.
Citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Equalization about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we have one resolution approving the application for tax exemptions on motor vehicles recommended for approval by the county treasurer. Is there a motion to approve and adjourn? Motion by Commissioner Duda, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. No questions or comments. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
We're going to move into the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Commissioners and take the corrections after the Board of Commissioners. So roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle. Here. Commissioner Kavanaugh. Here. Commissioner Duda. Here. Commissioner Kraft. Here. Commissioner Morgan. Here. Commissioner Rogers. Here. Madam Chair.
Here. Item A, approval of the minutes of the Board of Commissioners meeting held Tuesday, December 5th, and item B, approval of claims submitted for payment process through Tuesday, December 12th, 2017. Is there a motion to approve A and B? Motion by Commissioner Morgan, seconded by Commissioner Kraft. No questions or comments. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
The consent agenda, there are 3 items, A, B, and C. Is there a motion to approve? Motion by Commissioner Kraft, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
We have a couple of recognitions. The first recognition for the following county employee, and I would ask Ms. Carol Prokoff to come forward. And Brian. And Carol is being recognized for her 25 years of service to the Douglas County Election Commissioner. And I also want to recognize today with her are her fellow employees sitting over here. And we also have a special guest, City Councilman Gary Gernant is in the audience this morning. So good morning. Okay.
I'm here today to honor one of our many hardworking and dedicated employees from the election. 25 years of service. Here with me today is Carol. About half of her co-workers, some of the temporary employees who have worked with her, and of course her friends. Carol was hired in 1992 under Margaret Jorgensen.
Oh gosh, yeah.
And worked with 6 commissions. She's done a variety of jobs at the election commission. Currently, she's the voter registration supervisor, where she maintains the role to keep it clean for the over 346,000 registered voters we have in Douglas County. The citizens of Douglas County have benefited from Carol's involvement not only as an employee, but a variety of other ways. She She actually started in the Navy, working for 911 for about 4 years. She was a reserve deputy for 10 years. She's currently part of the Citizen Patrol with Gary, and she's an active member at her church, Our Lady of Lourdes, and numerous other organizations. So with that, we resolve, whereas Douglas County, Nebraska recognizes that its employees are the county's most important asset and resource for providing quality service to the citizens of Douglas County. Whereas the county wishes to recognize Carol Prokop of the Douglas County Election Commission for 25 years of dedicated and faithful service to the voters of Douglas County. Now therefore, be it resolved by this Board of County Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that the county recognizes Carol Prokop for her dedicated and faithful service to the voters of Douglas County and thankfully presents this resolution as testimony thereof. Thank you, Carol.
Can I get a motion to approve? Everybody made that motion, Dan. And everybody seconded. With that, could we please have a vote, please?
Commissioners Morgan and Duda. Okay. Motion passes unanimously.
Commissioner Boyle?
I'd like to be the first to congratulate you and thank you for the work that you performed at that office. You've done it, and the entire staff has too. I'm familiar with the office, and I know what you're doing out there. You've served with integrity and honesty and competence, and you are the epitome of, as are so many of these other people, what Douglas County employees are all about. Dedicated, hardworking, honest, show up for work, do your job with humor and with a great deal of dignity. So I personally am aware of your abilities and many of the members of the staff that are here. So I want to personally thank you for what you've done for the people of Douglas County. Thank you very much, Carol.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
I'd like to second what Commissioner Boyle said. Carol and I have known each other and been friends for more than 30 years, and I admire your dedication and your career of service to Douglas County. You've done an excellent job. I've had many interactions with the election commissioners over the period that you've been there, and I've always found you to be helpful, informative, courteous, kind, and just one of the best that we have. So thank you, Carol. Thank you very much.
Commissioner Kraft?
Yeah, Carol, I think the feeling is pretty unanimous. Unfortunately, Mike said it first. But yeah, he said it for all of us. Thank you.
Commissioner Rogers?
Just to add on, I remember the first experience that I had before I was even involved in any type of public service to some degree and trying to help with some voter registration efforts, starting from scratch. I didn't know you at the time, but your name was the first name referred to me as a reference point where to start from, and that was probably some 20-some years ago. But for that role that you've been in and just knowing the importance that it is to a lot of people that I work with to some degree, it says a lot for what you've been able to do and keep that to the standard where it is. So I just thank you for your service and wish you well.
Commissioner Duda?
Thank you. I'm just completing my 25th year, Carol. It seems like we kind of got a bit of a start together. But the fact that you worked for 6 election commissioners, I mean, you started here in this building or in the courthouse, I mean, under Margaret Jorgensen and Arlene Steyer. The continuity is so important when you've had 6 different bosses come and go, that somebody there knows how the system works, how to keep everything flowing smoothly. We have so many, I mean, you're not alone. We got a lot of great employees. You happen to be the one that we're recognizing and honoring this morning, and how pleased I am to get to be a part of it. Thank you for all you've done for us.
And it's a rare occasion that Commissioner Boyle has the first word, but I'm going to get the last word. And well, I just want to echo what everyone has said. And not only have you been an exemplary employee and dedicated and quality service to the citizen, you've been a good friend. And that's what's important. And I wish you luck on whatever your next endeavor is. No, I know she's not leaving, but no, I know she's not leaving, but I mean, again, after 25 years, there's something more that you're going to be going after, and I want to wish you the best on that. And I'm glad you're still going to be around, actually, but yeah, you too. And I also thank the employees for being here and showing their support of you and the office. So thank you. With that, is there anyone else wishing to make any comments? Okay. All right. Did you want to say anything, Carol? And if you could just come around, we'll hand you the resolution. Shake everybody's hand. No more. We have one other recognition, and that is Miss Jane Faust, but I don't see her. Oh, she's not coming up?
I don't know. I don't think
so. Oh, okay. All right. Well, Jane is being recognized for retiring from the Douglas County Clerk Comptroller's Office after 43 years of service to the citizens of Douglas County. Dan?
Good morning, Dan Ash, Douglas County Clerk. I'm very honored to be able to speak on this item, but a little sad as well. So as Commissioner Borgeson just said, Jane Faust has been the county's payroll administrator, or she's currently the county's payroll administrator. She's been in the payroll office for 43 years, 31 of those years as the payroll administrator. This Friday is her last day. Before I read the resolution, I just want to say a few things about Jane. So she does not quite as many clerks as election commissioners for Carroll, but Jane served under, or Jane worked with 4 county clerks. She started with Lloyd Kilmer from 1974 to 77, and she was with Walter Spellman for the entire time he was county clerk from 77 to 86, and she was with Tom Cavanaugh from 86 to 2015, and then I've been lucky to have her for the last 2 years and 1 month. So, and Jane, she's not just well known and respected in the clerk's office, but countywide, and she's not just respected because she does a great job, but for the type of person she is, and I'll give an example to illustrate that. A few weeks ago, I sent out an email to all the elected officials and department heads letting them know that Jane was going to be retiring, and I don't think I've ever gotten so many responses to one of my emails before, and of course all of them positive, and congratulating Jane and letting us know how much they're going to miss her. And of course over the last few weeks we've had a lot of people from outside the office stop in to congratulate her and wish her well. As far as us in the clerk's office, we all look up to her, especially the people that have worked in the payroll office with her. So right now there's 5 employees in the clerk's office that either are working in the payroll office or have worked in the payroll office, and I could say those 5 individuals are really very fond of her. I certainly would tell you how great of a mentor she is. She really enjoyed teaching others. Jane was always willing to help others out and share knowledge, and she was just a very easy person to get along with. It was a real pleasure to get to work with her. Rocio Padilla, she's been in the payroll office for 17 years. She's going to be our next payroll administrator, and I'm excited about that, and Jane definitely is too. But even though I'm excited for the future, it's still tough to see Jane go. So with that, I'll read the resolution to you all. Whereas Douglas County, Nebraska recognizes that its employees are the county's most important asset and resource for providing quality service to the citizens of Douglas County. And whereas on August 26, 1974, Jane Faust began working in the payroll division of the Douglas County Clerk Comptroller's Office. And whereas after years of productive and diligent work, Jane Faust would go on to become the payroll division administrator on June 28, 1986, a position she maintained until her retirement on December 15, 2017. And whereas Jane Faust always desired to be helpful and professional with her coworkers and regularly made herself available to them when assistance was needed. And whereas Jane Faust took pride in mentoring the other employees in the payroll division, happily sharing her knowledge and wisdom. And whereas Jane Faust always performed her duties with the intention of doing what was best for the employees and citizens of Douglas County. And whereas Douglas County wishes to recognize Jane Faust on her retirement after 43 years of dedicated service. Now therefore be it resolved by this Board of Commissioners, Douglas County, Nebraska, that this board hereby recognizes Jane Faust for her long, dedicated, and outstanding service to the residents and employees of Douglas County, and thankfully presents this resolution as testimony thereof, dated this 12th day of December 2017.
Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Jeter, seconded by Commissioner Kavanaugh. Any questions or comments? Well, we'll vote first and then we'll take comments. Please vote.
Motion passes unanimously.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
I'd just like to say that Jane has set a high bar for public service in Douglas County. I've known her since I was a young lawyer working for Douglas County back in the 70s and 80s. And she always had the highest standard of professionalism, courtesy, and efficiency. I think that anybody who's worked here any period of time has probably had the opportunity to come in contact with her. She was always very helpful with any questions that people might have relative to payroll issues, and I think that the standard that she has set is one that we can all kind of use as a gold standard for public service in Douglas County. And I wish her well. I saw her the other day at lunch, and I knew that she wasn't going to be here today, and I said, that's the way to take your retirement. Just go for it. And I wish her the very best in whatever endeavor she wants to pursue for a well-deserved retirement. Thank you, Jane.
Commissioner Boyle?
I'd like to add to what Commissioner Kavanaugh said, except I wasn't a young lawyer, but I don't think I've ever been one. But anyway, young that is. In any event, I've had the pleasure of working with Jane on some committees, most notably the Wellness Committee, and she's really a very dedicated and serious employee with a good sense of humor and very competent. And I just didn't want this moment to pass without acknowledging her skills and the kind of person she is. She's another one of those really terrific, dedicated county employees that knows what's going on and how to do things. So we're very fortunate, and I'm sorry to see her go and wish her well.
And if you could hand her the resolution for us on behalf of the board, we would appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we have one more presentation, and that is to the winners of our Douglas County 2017 Food Drive Challenge. And so can the employees from the 911 Center, if any of them are here, there she is, and General Assistance and Public Defenders, please come forward. And as you know, every year we have a annual food drive, and then the departments will work with the community to see where to provide those goods to. And this year, it is an amazing total that our employees collected 13,837 items for our local organizations. 911 Center collected 10,618 items, and they donated them to Catholic Charities and Project We Care. General Assistance collected 460 items, and they provided theirs to Together Inc. And Public Defenders collected 626 items, and they donated them to the Stevens Center.
Right.
And so, you know, we know the certificates that we give is just a token of our appreciation, but we just want you to know, please go back and tell the employees how thankful we are for their generous donations to the communities, organizations in this time of need. And you guys really step it up every year, and we're very proud of you, and we thank you for that. Next is citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Commissioners about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to presentations. We have a presentation regarding a request by Newcastle Inc. for the county to issue its tax-exempt revenue bonds for the benefit of Newcastle Inc. to finance improvements to its existing facilities located at 900 North 90th Street. Mike Rogers, bond counsel from Gilmore and Bell are here. This is the public hearing is to be held Tuesday, December 19th. So today you're just presenting the proposal to us.
Good morning. Again, my name is Mike Rogers. I'm a bond attorney with Gilmore and Bell here in Omaha, 450 Regency Parkway. Today, the presentation is regarding financing improvements to the existing facilities of Newcastle Inc., the retirement center, in an amount not to exceed $2,600,000. The county would serve as issuer of the bonds under sections 13-1101 through 13-1110. The financing would be for Newcastle, which is a 501c3 entity, and as you may know, under federal tax law, it's required that a governmental issuer serve as a conduit issuer or issuer of the bonds in order for a 501c3 to have access to tax-exempt interest on their financings. The repayment obligation would be solely that of Newcastle Inc. There would be no pecuniary liability on the part of the county or its taxpayers for repayment of the debt. The bondholders would look solely to Newcastle for repayment of these obligations. The bonds would be purchased by American National Bank in a direct purchase transaction under the terms of a loan agreement among the county, Newcastle, and American National Bank. There'll be a hearing, as Chair Borgeson mentioned, a hearing and a formal resolution next week. And Julie Sebastian, the President and CEO of Newcastle, is here to describe the project.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for your time. I just am here to describe what we plan to do. So Newcastle Retirement Center is a 179 apartment assisted living licensed by the state of Nebraska. We also operate an adult day center licensed by the state of Nebraska called Franciscan Center. And our improvements are capital improvements to our first floor of our existing building to improve the Franciscan Center and create more space to enable us to meet more community need. And we are also adding a fitness center to the assisted living building on the second floor, bigger space for the residents to use in conjunction with their home health providers or other therapists so that they can maintain their health as long as possible. And last, we will be adding a new security and nurse call system just to update to a more modern system.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Commissioner Rogers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I guess I'm asking is, my question kind of is, like, are you all feel like you're going to beat the clock? Meaning, we're just, I'm sure there's other steps to make this official after this will go next week. So basically, anytime next week that bill could pass, and it's a question of if this provision is going to be in there. So I'm just asking, have you all had any conversation if you're going to beat the clock before tax reform?
Yes, the answer is yes, and thank you for the question. As you may know, the House bill would eliminate the ability of 501c3s to access tax-exempt financing. The Senate bill would not affect 501c3 financings, and so it's unclear what will survive in the conference committee and ultimately be law. But yes, we plan on closing next Thursday, the 21st, in advance of the end of the year. So we have everything all teed up for closing next week.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Mr. Rogers, I have a quick kind of technical question. I guess
Sure.
If I understand you correctly, the sole purchasers of this bond issue are American National Bank.
That's correct.
Then is there some reason that mechanism is being used with the sole purchaser rather than putting them in the market?
That really ultimately comes down to the preference of Newcastle Retirement Center and how they want to proceed. It's a little more streamlined process and a much quicker process to go through to have effective what it would feel like a loan with a bank than it is to prepare an offering document and go out to the public. And as Commissioner Rogers indicated, the time frame was short for this transaction, and after tax reform was introduced is when this sort of came together as a financing. And so doing something as a publicly offered bond issue would have taken too long to put together is one reason, but secondarily, quite frequently actually, 501c3s decide to just negotiate with the bank and proceed with a transaction that seems more like a loan than a publicly offered financing.
And I appreciate what you're saying about the new tax code, which is going to work a hardship not only on 501c3s and the charitable giving in this country, but on the middle class as well. It's frankly an obscenity, and it's too bad that it's before the Congress and looks like it's on its way to passage. Ms. Sebastian, if I could just for a second, you mentioned the number of residents that you currently have there, and what was that?
We have 179 apartments. We currently have an average of 168 residents.
How many, I'm sorry?
168.
Okay. And will this increase your capacity significantly?
It will not increase our capacity for residency. The first floor that we're improving doesn't have exit windows that it's built into a hill. We can't add apartments. But it will increase our capacity to enable people to live at Newcastle longer, even though they're battling with memory trouble.
And I've been there many times over the years. It's an excellent facility, and I commend you for what you do.
Thank you.
You provide a really core necessity to our community in terms of quality care for our elderly and disabled. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Boyle.
I'd like to ask bond counsel a question, if I could, just briefly. And I know you're trying to get this done because of what's pending before the House and the Senate. And I want the county board to kind of take a look at, I listened carefully to what you said, take a look at the legislation. I think this is something, first of all, what you're doing is really positive for our community. And I'm very familiar with your operations. My mother suffered from Alzheimer's, and she was a patient at the daycare, and it was really a real relief for my father and for other members of our family. So I know what you do, and it's really excellent, very important to our community. And what I'm concerned about is that what's taking place with the House and the Senate will prevent this sort of expansion and improve services for our community. And I think the county board should take a look at this and zero in on it and contact our senators and our representative and say, this is not in the interest of the people of Nebraska or Douglas County, if that is the case. So I just want to say that publicly, that I am going to explore that. And am I on target or am I off? I don't know that you want to get into the politics of it, but
Well, I can comment that I do know there have been a large number of 501c3s and political subdivisions reaching out to their representatives on the impact that this tax bill would have on tax-exempt financings, not only on 501c3 financings like this one, which will be before you next week, but also the elimination of advance refundings, which could have a more direct impact on the county.
Okay, I've got your phone number on here, so you're probably going to get a call from me for more information. Just not to drag you into this, but just to get myself up to speed. I appreciate your coming. Wish you good luck, and thank you for your comments.
Commissioner Kavanaugh?
No way. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you next week.
Great.
Thank you very much.
We have a next presentation is discussion regarding a facility use agreement lease between Nebraska Organ Recovery NORS and Douglas County to allow for use of space to conduct autopsy services in Douglas County. And with us today is our county attorney, Don Klein.
Good morning. Don Klein, Douglas County Attorney. I have a handout, Dan. I'm very excited about this possibility. I think it's a great example of a public-private partnership. The current facility that we have, the morgue at Douglas County Hospitals, is somewhat antiquated. It's adequate, but not probably up to the standards that it should be. And I think it would cost the county a tremendous amount of money just to remodel that. One of the other problems we have with the current facility is the lack of storage. We have the storage capability for 10 bodies at this time, and we've outgrown that, unfortunately. And at times we've had to have bodies stored at other facilities because we just don't have the room. We also can only perform one autopsy at a time here at this location. But what I've handed you is the scheme or drawing with regard to the building that NORS is building. That's right on 38th Avenue and Leavenworth Streets. It's been cleared. They've already started groundbreaking there. The schematic that you see behind you with the diagram of the blueprints shows the possibility for 3 tables, autopsy tables, in our location for us, and the storage possibilities for 24 bodies, which would more than meet our needs. So we would also be able to do more than one autopsy at a time at this new facility, and we'd have a greater storage capacity. There's going to be docks that are right there to unload and load. So it's all the expenses, the staffing. They will have 24-hour staff there that will take care of receiving and when people leave the facility, the bodies leave the facility. We worked very hard also, the county, and I'm sorry, Kyle Herber's here, who's the CEO and president of NORS, and Bill Orrin, who's the acting deputy county attorney, who's the acting coroner, are both here in case you had some questions. I think it's so important, since I've been county attorney, that we've really developed a very strong relationship with NORS. I think if we in the county can take what's a terribly sad situation and get something positive out of it, we've developed a very strong relationship with NORS with regard to organ transplants, tissue, use of tissue, eyes, anything that we can possibly do, of course with the family's consent. The families are a big part of this, obviously. So I think that we've developed a very strong working relationship here. They are willing to have us use their facility for our posts. Dr. Bowen, Dr. Jess Kearney, Dr. Lindy, and Dr. Eliff are our board-certified forensic pathologists that we contract with. They're very excited about this. There were concerns that they had with regard to our current facility, and if we ever had to recruit any other doctors, that might be an issue. Obviously, it won't be with this facility. Teresa Urick has been working on the contract with the representative from NORS, Mike Matukowicz, and the way we've worked this out, at least at this point in time, and we'll show that to you, is that there won't be any. We do about 9 this year. I think we're targeted to have 900 autopsies probably about 900. We split that up evenly about out-of-county autopsies and Douglas County autopsies. And I just, for a comparison, in 2011, we did 648. So we've grown quite a bit in doing those. We do get revenue from the out-of-county autopsies. They pay us a facility fee of $250, and that's the part that's going to go to NORS now and will offset any costs that we would have. If those out-of-county autopsies weren't here, the agreement would say that the county would have to pay NORS about $6,700 a month, but that's more than covered by our out-of-county autopsies that we do. So there wouldn't be any cost to the county at all. No maintenance fees, no service fees, no security, nothing. All the supplies and equipment are paid for also by the doctors, so we don't have to pay for any of those the facility fee as far as equipment, supplies that the doctors use during the course of an autopsy. So I see this as very beneficial to the county and the citizens of Douglas County with the work that we're doing in this area. So I would urge you to take a look at this. As I said, there's a couple pages of the schematic. Kyle, did you want to say something to the board here about what we're doing?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I guess I've become a frequent guest, so thank you for allowing me the opportunity. Yeah, this is a really unique partnership, one that does exist in other parts of the country where the coroner's or the medical examiner's office is paired up with the local organ procurement organization to help facilitate donation. We're in a unique position in that over half of all of our donors are also autopsy cases. So the amount of information that's shared between us and the physicians and us and Bill as the acting coroner is great. And so having us in one co-location will only streamline for all of the parties involved, as well as hopefully allow for the additional opportunity for donation for those families that are not given that opportunity because we're split apart today.
Very good. We have a Commissioner Boyle.
I just want to say thank you. I'm really impressed with the leadership of you gentlemen in putting this together. It really makes great sense, and I'm really happy to see this taking place. And I thank you for your spirit of cooperation. And this is a very good thing and very important. Thank you.
Commissioner Duda.
Thank you. You've been working on this for a long time. It's been a long time coming, and what an exciting thing. I wish all of our decisions were this simple and clear-cut. I mean, this is a no-brainer, and that's what we're best at. The improvements that you're bringing at such a cost-effective way for the citizens of Douglas County is just wonderful. This is exciting. Pleased to see it happening.
And I would just like to echo that. I'm excited to see this project move forward. When you first brought it to us, it was exciting back then, and now that it's becoming a reality, it's even more exciting. And again, the services will just ratchet up in quality and efficiencies, and so we appreciate that. Thank you.
What's the expectation as far as the finish date?
November 19th is when substantial completion will be, and so we'll move the end of November and probably through December. So really ramp up probably beginning in 2019.
Very good. Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
No? Okay. And then there is one other presentation, and that's opioid litigation and the engagement of counsel. And again, we have our county attorney here to present this
Don Klein,
item.
Douglas County Attorney. Thank you for your time. I was about a month and a half ago, we were approached by local counsel, Greg and Chris Abood, and a law firm from Florida who are involved in a class action litigation against opioid manufacturers with regard to the distribution of the opioids. And I'll just give you some highlights. I think you're all aware, if you watch the news and see what's going on around the country, we are probably not in as bad a shape from that standpoint as places like West Virginia or Ohio are, but certainly it's here. We see the tentacles of the problem with opioid abuse occurring here in Douglas County. There are statistics, and I'll pull those here, from the CDC, and issues with regard to these manufacturers. The biggest manufacturers of the opioids probably bring in about $400 billion in revenue a year from this. Recently, if you looked at, the Justice Department had fined most of those manufacturers, I think about $150 million apiece, for their lack of due diligence in selling these opioids to different communities. So I guess I'm asking us, Douglas County, to join in this lawsuit against these 5 largest manufacturers of prescription opioids. They're highly addictive. In 1970, Congress enacted a system to control the volume of opioid pills being distributed in this country. It let only a select few wholesalers gain the right to deliver opioids. In exchange, these companies were supposed to halt suspicious orders, control against diversion of these dangerous drugs to illegitimate uses, but in recent years they've failed to do that. And as a result, there are many communities that are paying a price for that failure. And we're taking this action because the costs of this opioid crisis are going to be overwhelming. They overwhelm our ability for the health and safety of our residents. It's a huge public health crisis. The result, partly of the result, is by the failure of these drug makers to safely and responsibly market their branded opioids to doctors and patients, and the failure of wholesale drug distributors to carry out their legal obligation to notify the DEA of suspicious orders, even as the number of pills flowing into the communities continues to increase. And the residents of Douglas County pay a big part of that price. So I'm asking you to allow us to hire a firm that's an expert in this area, along with our local council. And you know, we're going to keep continuing to fight this epidemic. We want to be ahead of the curve. We spend countless resources through police, fire, health center, who address this epidemic daily. This action, we're hoping, will not cost us anything. All the expenses will be paid for in the course of litigation by the law firm. If we would have to be the ones that would have to agree to any settlement. That would be something that would be our decision alone. And then they would get a percentage. It's a contingent fee case where they would get a percentage of the fee. I think it's 30%, which is pretty standard with regard to all the firms that are doing this kind of work. Time's somewhat of the essence in that these are cases that have already been filed in federal court. In the federal courts now, the judge who's in charge wants to combine all these lawsuits into one big case. And I would hope that the manufacturers would see the light here and would settle these cases. I think there's a good case here on a public nuisance charge. If you've seen historically, the attorney generals that were involved with some of these kinds of class actions with the tobacco companies. The states got the settlement figures, the damage figures, and I think it was a very minimal amount came to the counties. Here, the county's directly going to take the action, and so any money that we receive would come directly to Douglas County. So my hope would be that if that happens, if we're successful, that we can use this money for law enforcement with regard to the opioids, drug rehabilitation, drug courts, all those kinds of things that would help the citizens of Douglas County. So I'm also excited about the possibility here of being able to bring some money into Douglas County to help fight something that I think we're seeing around the country. So if you, like I said, Teresa's been working on the contract, with the law firm. If you want to see anything else or have any questions about this, I'd be happy to answer any.
Commissioner Rogers?
No, Madam Chair, I'm just asking, do we need to move to give him approval, or we just agree to let him go forward?
You'll be bringing back the contract. Right,
Teresa. I think next meeting we'll probably have
the
that
19th,
for
you'll be
discussion
ready?
today.
Okay. Well, thank you. And again, Commissioner Rogers and I have sat in many meetings together, listening across the country what this is doing to communities, and it's devastating. And I don't really know if I want to use this. We're lucky that we aren't in the predicament that these other communities are, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't and couldn't take action here in our community to make sure that we don't get there.
Right.
And so again, as you were saying, if these lawsuits are successful, we would be able to use those funds to make sure that we're combating it on the front end rather than on the back end.
Exactly.
I mean, those stories are horrific, and it is heartbreaking. And the services, and it's kind of ironic that we were talking about an autopsy suite, and we listened to attorneys across the country telling us that they are out of room for bodies because they had a horrible weekend of deaths because of the opioid epidemic. And so, again, I'm glad we're out on front of this so that we don't end up to be one of those communities. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Don.
With that, we do have one public hearing, and that is the public hearing to permit discussion and the presentation of testimony regarding the revisions to the Department of General Assistance Primary Health Care Network. And Deb is here to answer any questions. There will be action taken on December 19th, next week, on this item. And so, Deb, you want to just kind of give us a rundown of how the public hearings have been going, or forums have been going? And
sure. Deb Redding, General Assistance. We held 2 public forums back in September. We had one landlord show up and one client. Basically, the one landlord was requesting a rent increase, but we did a rental survey in the community where we look at each week. We took the month of September, looked at the paper each week, the thrifty nickel, and came up with the average rent would be $504.06. So we're not recommending a rental increase this year. Right now we pay $500 a month, and that has to include utilities. As you said, this is the second public hearing. So the proposed changes, that's things that the staff had discussed, would be a specialized housing need. We currently have that in our guidelines where we can pay up to $125 a month more for a person who may have a physical or mental health condition that would make it a hardship for them to have to move from an existing housing. We also use that for Heartland Family Services. They have money where they can pay a client's rent, but maybe not the utilities. So we use that money to be able to help pay for the utility bills as well. It doesn't affect a whole lot of our clients, maybe 15 clients, 20 clients a year. What we're asking for is to increase that from $125 to $200. We also have a 50% disregard for clients who get a job and start working. We disregard 50% of their income currently. What we would like to do is disregard 100% of their income for 3 months. And that would just hopefully incentivize a client to go out, get a job, and know that, they're not going to be working a minimum wage job and still have the difficulty of paying their own rent, buying their own prescriptions. So we would like to do that 100% for 3 months. We are recommending an increase in the vehicle exemption from $5,000 to $7,000. And that would be the equity that a person can have in an automobile. Again, that doesn't affect a whole lot of our clients, but some. The non-food order, that's what clients are given to in order to purchase cleaning items, laundry. Right now, it's paid based on where the client resides. If someone lives at a homeless shelter, they only get $20 a month. But we're hearing from some clients that really doesn't work. So what we want to do is propose that it's increased to $25 a month for everybody on general assistance, regardless of their housing situations. That would have an impact to the budget of about $6,000 a year, which is something that we can absorb in our current budget. And those are really the only changes that we're recommending at this time.
Commissioner Boyle?
Yes. First, Deb, I am very happy with what you're doing with the agency and the attitude of the employees. It seems like, if I could describe it this way, that none of you have lost the fire in your stomach to help people, which is really terrific. It's a great attitude. I get concerned about what I observe in the community occasionally, and I don't know what the answer to it is, or if there is one, or if it's going overboard. But frequently I see stalled cars with the hood up, and they're usually, I'm sorry to say, General Motors cars, and they have a dealer tag on the back that indicates the car was just purchased. And you can imagine who the dealer is. But anyway, there's 2 or 3 of them. And usually there's a woman, many times African-American woman with some children in the car, looking at the engine, and probably the same way I look at an engine. It could be a Maytag for all I know. But anyway, knew that'd get Commissioner Duda. It could be a John Deere. But seriously, I get concerned about, that just triggers a whole lot of problems when a car breaks down. Getting to work, getting the kids where they need to go, all these sort of things. And I wonder, I'd suggest to you, and ask the board to think about this too, if there's some place for us to consider, frankly, offering an emergency tow service, and possibly even a garage that would, there's some nice good garages around town, franchises and locally owned, that could service those cars at a price that, we could afford and we could work out a deal. Those sort of things just really put a hardship. I remember years ago, my dad told me that he made ice cream for a living, and we were not a wealthy family. He started working for 75 cents an hour when we lived at 55th and L, and he walked to 42nd Street to get downtown to make ice cream. And he bought a car in Council Bluffs one time, and just in passing, he told me that, well, first of all, we didn't have a car growing up, but when we did buy it, the transmission was held up with cardboard. And so there he was. The transmission fell out about 2 blocks from the dealer. That's just the way it goes. And so that created problems for him. And I just wonder whether we could at least explore the possibility. And I'll leave it at that, and we can talk further, and I'll see if it makes any sense. I'm curious about what are the most serious hardships that you run into. Is it transportation, child care, or necessities, clothing? What's something that you would see as really a real need that maybe should be discussed, and like this car thing I talked about? Is there something else, other things that you need help with, or you see people helping, struggling?
I think that most of the people that we see obviously need assistance with housing, getting themselves, off the streets if they're homeless.
Okay.
Medical care. And I understand what you're saying about the vehicles. A lot of times the general assistance clients most of them don't have vehicles.
Right.
And we're dealing with homeless clients, single people, ages 19 to 64, with no minor children in their household.
I see. And how about young people coming out of foster care? Are you finding that population to be served, or is there something that needs to be done?
We do see some of those clients, but not a whole lot.
All right. We'll talk further, and okay. I am the resident bleeding heart, so. Thanks, Deb.
You bet. Thank
Commissioner Duda.
Thanks. I had the opportunity to come out to one of your hearings and watch the process. You have a nice process here to try to get everybody's input into what the new guidelines will say. My question, and I should already know the answer to this, but I'm sorry I don't. You said we did a survey of rents in the area that showed about $504 for an average rent.
Yes.
We pay $500. What I want to know is, where do the utilities fit in? Does that 504, that probably doesn't include utilities, and the $500 we pay, we do expect the landlord to pay for the utility.
Right. It does include utilities
the
in most
504
cases.
Does?
Yes.
Very good. Thank
Yep.
you. Then that answers my question.
Sure.
Appreciate
And some of the places that don't, the landlord will pay the utilities for the clients.
All right. Thank you, Deb.
Deb, Commissioner Duda, I think what would be helpful during one of the committees or presentation to the board at some point is we had general assistants keep a zip code map of where our clients come from, and the makeup of who are we serving, and like Commissioner Boyle was asking, what are the big needs, or top 5 needs or whatever. I think it might be interesting if we had a presentation on that data so that we could really see who we are serving in through that office. And I agree with Commissioner Boyle. The folks that work over there, they haven't lost a fire in their belly to serve the clients who need us most, and we appreciate all of you over there being able to continue to have that desire and dedication. So, but again, I think it would be interesting information to present to the board sometime.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the final public hearing will be held next week.
No, it's today.
Oh, it is today. So next week we're adopting.
Next week we'll adopt the changes. Yep.
So today we do have to close the public hearing.
Correct.
Are there any other questions, comments, folks wishing to speak during this public hearing? If not, I will close the public hearing, and as we stated, there will be an action item on next week's agenda to adopt these guidelines. Okay?
All right.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Melissa. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks again for your food drive work. With that, we'll move to committees, the first being the finance, the budget report as presented, unless there's anything, okay? Human resources, the weekly personnel from civil service as presented, unless there's questions or comments. And legislative issues. Anyone have any that they want to bring up? I talked to Sean yesterday, and they're working with the senators in terms of seeing kind of what the landscape's going to be this coming session, and interest in some of the legislative bills that we talked to them about during our breakfast. So if anybody has anything else, just let me know. The resolution for setting the salary for the county commissioners for 2019 through 2022. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Commissioner Boyle?
I was just to get your attention to make the motion.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
I didn't state there is a motion by Commissioner Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
In looking at this, and this is the second time we've had it before us, I had an opportunity to look back over the history of this particular issue going back 20 years or more. And in light of some of the public comment, and I guess maybe to clarify the issue, I want to make it clear, I voted against this the first time that it came before us, and the reason that I did that was that I thought it was an inappropriate increase in our compensation. That said, I think that the compensation that we've had over the last 20 years has been, I guess from a strategic planning point of view, not effectively maintained, so that there are wide swings in compensation from year to year. I mean, 15% plus swings in compensation increases, from 0 in some years to 14+% in other years, and that's just not right. What we should institute is what corporate America and a lot of other best practices in the real world have, is a compensation plan that pretty much takes the guesswork out of this and that eliminates these big swings. Because what we have realized using the current system, if you want to call it that, is that it appears that the compensation windfalls are more than they actually are. If you take the compensation for the Douglas County Board from 1997 to the current year, the average increase from 1997 to 2016 is 2.6%. The average increase from 1997 to 2016 is 3.1%. And if we did nothing today in terms of this increase, that period of time, this resolution covers a period going forward to 2022, would realize an average annual increase of 3.1%. That smoothing of the compensation increases, such as they are, is what occurs in the real world and should occur in Douglas County in terms of the compensation, certainly for the county board. So that's what I would advocate. As a result, I think that, that's going to serve a couple of purposes. First of all, it's important that we compensate and pay a living wage to people that are doing the public service on behalf of the community, and I think we do. We have realized comparabilities with other counties. I don't think that we are currently even the highest in Nebraska, and surprisingly, the last time we revisited this, we found some counties in rural Nebraska that were being compensated in excess of what Douglas County is. So I don't think that we are out of line in proposing something along the line of a steady 2 or 3% increase in compensation, which is what is realized by collective bargaining units, what is realized by our non-union employees do even better in recent years here. But at least it has some predictability and deals with the fact that you need to fairly compensate everybody who does the work, the important work of administering the government of Douglas County. So I think that if we are going to proceed on this issue, we need to take a strategic, comprehensive look at how we do it, and not this back and forth, 0 to 15% stop and go procedure, which has been the norm in Douglas County for, I went back to 1997, so that's 20 years. That's just not right. We have important work to do here. We oversee a budget of about $1/3 billion annually, over 2,000 employees. We provide vital public services in the areas of public safety and healthcare, environmental protection, and roads and other areas. And so what we need to do is look at adequate compensation for important jobs. I think that we have that currently. I think that if we do nothing here today, we will have that for the next period of years anticipated by this amendment. This, parenthetically, is a departure from past practices where salary compensation was set for a 2-year period, and this anticipates a 4-year period. I don't have a particular problem with that, except, again, there was nothing thought out about this. It was proposed at a meeting a couple weeks ago, and all of a sudden it becomes the new norm. This is no way to run a railroad. You need to have a more long-term view of how you're going to handle important issues, compensation issues, finance issues, capital construction issues, than what has been kind of an ad hoc, knee-jerk approach to an important component of county government. So I'm not going to vote for this amendment or this resolution. I think that we have an adequate compensation package for Douglas County commissioners currently. I think that if you look over the last 20 years, you will see that modest increases have occurred, but they have occurred in such a fashion that occasionally, because there were 0% increases in a number of years, there have been larger percent increases to get us to that basic 2.6, 3.9% increase average over the last 20 years. So when people comment about, well, there was a huge increase in 27 and 2018, they need to look at the history of this particular issue. And the history of this issue is the compensation package has been in that 2.6 to 3.1% area for the last 20 years. that's in line with what the economy has done, and it's in line with what private industry has done. And you know, it's an adequate package. I think it's adequate going forward for the next 4 years, and for that reason, I'm going to vote no on the proposed resolution.
Thank you. Commissioner Kraft?
Yes, Commissioner Kavanaugh. I heard a contradiction in what you're saying. You said long-term planning, but you want to do short-term planning, or you don't want to do no planning. Now, one of the things, you know, the last raise was initiated by you, and it was...
I'm sorry?
The last raise, you helped initiate that and pushed hard for it.
I didn't.
Oh, yes, you did.
Okay.
And one of the strongest advocates for it. Now, I want to ask, what is our purpose as a government body? Okay. One of the views is that it's for the greater good of our community. Now, what is an incentive to run for office? Well, as Commissioner Borgeson said, fire in your belly. That's a good reason. Passion for one issue. I see that, but that's not necessarily the best issue, because then you're a one-issue person. You don't care about the rest of it or what's happening in society. You can care about the greater good. But now, who can afford to run? After the last pay increase, which I voted against, I've been contacted by 6 people at length where we discussed for over 45 minutes to 2 hours. They're running for public office, including the county board, including challenging me. And that's fine. I like competition. Yeah, one time I ran without competition, I felt naked. Having somebody to run against me gets the passion out of me. When it's given to you, look how many times, when it's given to you, you don't have any drive. Look how many times county commissioners, city council members, state senators have had no one to challenge them. Now, look at the makeup of this board. Look at our average age.
Oh, you don't want to do that.
No, we don't want to do that. Look at our ability to control our own time. I had my own business. I could afford to take off when I needed to, when I wanted to. That allowed me to serve on the city council. Now, when I was on the city council, it cost me considerably more to serve in that position, cost my business more than I was getting compensated. Considerably more. When I was running my business here on the county board, it still cost more to my business than the compensation I was having. But let's say I was working as a teacher and wanted to run. Is my employer going to allow me to have Tuesdays off, Monday to go down to a state legislature meeting, committee meetings in the afternoon, certain days of the week when we can't schedule them on a Tuesday, meetings with community service groups during the day? You know, this is viewed as a part-time job, but is it really a part-time job, or is it a part-time on call, all-time on call, part-time in this office? And depending on what we as commissioners do, it can be a full-time plus job. When I was on the Omaha City Council, I put over 40 hours a week into working on the city council and city council issues. Between working there and working in my business, it was 80 hours a week. Now, not everybody has the drive or the passion to work for 80 hours a week, or the ability. I no longer have the ability. I've grown a few years older over the past 20 years. But, you know, who can afford, let's say you're in the, I mentioned the teachers, because one of the people who wanted to run, and it wants to run against me, is a teacher. And I encouraged him to run against me. I know that might sound strange, but as I said, I like competition. He would have to give up his teaching job. Then I talked to a young lady for about 45 minutes who's in the advertising business and has deadlines. She talked to her boss about running, not for the county board, but for the city council. And he said, sure, you can have Tuesdays off, provided you never miss a deadline, because if you miss a deadline, you're out of here. You know, that makes sense in many ways. So what is an incentive to run? Since the last vote on a pay increase for the county board, I have been approached, as I said, by 6 people in length and other people in passing, where they're now interested in possibly giving up their jobs or being able to sacrifice time from their jobs to run for this office. As I said, how many people can afford to serve? Really, there aren't many of us. There aren't many people who can give up 1 day a week plus be on call the rest of the week in order to serve on a public service board like this. There's a false view, as I said, that this is a part-time job. It's classified as such, but as I said, is it really? Then when we go back to the school board, that's an unpaid position, but it should be paid and should be well compensated, because that's a very controversial, very hard position. State legislators, they are so grossly underpaid, it is sinful. If you want competent people from all classes of life, that's what makes us a good government, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And I think I've said enough, so I'm going to shut up for a while. I'm sure you have other lights on.
Commissioner Duda, thank you.
Thank you. I would like to address the fact that this is a 4-year resolution compared to our normal resolution of 2 years, and why I requested that, and why I appreciate the willingness of the board to consider this one time only, setting them for 4 years out. Under the old system, we were setting them the first and second year out for our own salary in time that people knew what they had to pay for the filing fee. But what that system allowed is you had potentially, we were voting on our own salaries. When we say it's the position, not the person, if you're setting them far enough out, that's true. If you're only setting them 2 years out, you could potentially have a commissioner who just got elected and is very comfortable that for the next couple of years they have no problems, and they could vote themselves a very large increase. And then say 2 years later when they're up for re-election, they might say, no, we got to draw the line. This is too much. I can't be a part of that. These guys just spend too much money. I want to avoid these type of inconsistencies that have contributed to what Commissioner Kavanaugh pointed out was an erratic trend over the last 20 years. It's been an erratic trend going back much further than that, and I would like to see a little more consistency to it. And that's why I think if we set them 4 years out, so we know absolutely this is up for grabs. This salary is, we have no idea who's going to be receiving that salary yet until the electors tell us. So I appreciate the willingness to go forward for a 4-year project on this. Thank you.
Commissioner Morgan, thank you.
Well, I will be opposing this as I did before, and I do want to clarify one statement that Commissioner Kraft made. When we sat in room 903 a couple years ago on this pay increase, Commissioner Kavanaugh, I heard you initiate that kind of increase, as Commissioner Kraft said, and I think, Marianne, you may have been there, you may have not heard that. I am not going to speak for you, but I know that I heard that, and I just want to clarify what Commissioner Kraft said is accurate. And my reason for opposing it is because of the increase that we recently had, and I do think and consider serving in public office, and I've said it a lot in the public, is a tremendous privilege. I mean, the people place their trust in us, and it's really an honor to serve. The other thing I can say about serving in public office is certainly how much more you learn. I mean, it's really educational. And I know my time a while back in the legislature was quite a privilege and a great learning experience, and I've learned things here at this county board in the last 7 years, and appreciate all of the commissioners and what I've learned from each one of you. So that's my feeling about this. And I also want to just state one other thing, and I've said this publicly, and when I speak to groups, the state senators are the most underpaid public servants I know of, and I've told many of them I will speak out on that and have spoken out when I speak to a group about that. That needs to change for them, certainly, because they make a tremendous sacrifice. Lastly, I'd say to you, they can consider this a part-time that is Tuesdays, but we're at meetings 3-4 days a week very, very often. And it isn't just that we meet on Tuesday mornings and that's about it. We'll go sometimes. I've left here on Tuesday at 4:30. We have meetings on Monday at the health center and other meetings with our different boards, a pension board, usually on Thursdays and so on. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Commissioner Kavanaugh?
Thank you. I think the record will reflect that the last increase in compensation was proposed by Commissioner Rogers. I supported it. I think it was justified. In light of the fact that in previous years, this roller coaster ride of compensation had resulted in a number of years where there was zero increase. Matter of fact, I think that worked a significant hardship on some previous commissioners who suffered financial difficulty while serving on this board. But the record is easy to ascertain. It's public record. We can see who voted for what and who didn't vote. And we can see from public record who took the compensation and who didn't. Regardless of how anyone voted on the last compensation question, every commissioner took the pay. And I think that if you're going to look at this from the point of view of approaching it in a strategic, business-like fashion, you have to look over the long term. The long term is from 1997 to 2016, the average increase was 2.6%. From 97 to 2017, the average increase was 3.1%. And if we don't do anything here today, from 1997 to 2022, the average increase will be 3.1%. I don't think that's out of line. I think that's an adequate compensation package for the job at hand. The last time that we entertained this, Commissioner Rogers brought up the idea of looking at a full-time county commission, and he gave us an array of full-time commissioners to look at. There's still something to be said for that. I think that, as indicated by some of the other commissioners here today, people put in a lot of hours on this job. And I think that that's something that maybe a strategic view of the future might want to entertain. But the last time that we did this, we found that Douglas County commissioners were fourth in Nebraska behind Madison County, Lancaster County, and Wayne County in terms of county commissioner compensation. And, you know, part of that was due to the fact that we had done this roller coaster ad hoc knee-jerk approach, which has continued to this day, of compensation. I think that Commissioner Duda makes a case for doing it more long-term. I think that that is something that we should probably consider more than a few weeks out from the committee hearing to adoption, along with what's the compensation going to be for that longer period, that we should consider that for longer than the period of a few weeks from the committee hearing till now. But I'd be happy to share with anyone who's interested the history of this, including who proposed what and when, And I think that it leads me inescapably to the conclusion that today we should vote no on this resolution, and it's not going to impair the compensation that Douglas County Commissioners receive. I think a 3.1% increase over that period of time is, compatible with what the real world experiences, and that's where we should be.
No other questions or comments? There was a motion and a second. Please vote.
Motion passes. Commissioner Borgeson, Kavanaugh, Morgan voting no. All other commissioners voting yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Next resolution is a resolution approving the purchase of the Qualtrics software license off the state of Nebraska contract for the county to engage in various citizen and employee survey, research, and other cloud solutions to improve the county's operation. And I bring this to you after numerous presentations with commissioners and staff, and it's a deal that Qualtrics is a partner with our national association, and they're offering this full package at half the price for this year. And we have 5 departments that have had kind of deep dives into what this would do. I particularly think it will help us as a board be able to make better decisions, because we will have data that backs up our decision-making process. And so I present this to you today in hopes that we move forward with the contract and the services from the software from Qualtrics. Yeah. Motion by Commissioner Rogers, seconded by Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Kraft?
The only problem I have with this is that it's not budgeted, and it's a significant amount of money. Many of the things we vote on that are not budgeted are small amounts. Now, my experience has been that if it's offered at half price this year, why wouldn't they offer it half price next year? And why can't we wait until we've budgeted it? What are we going to lose? How are we going to ramp into this? What type of information is it going to give? Or is it one of these feel-good things that we're going to put in place? We're going to buy a package, then we're going to find out we don't use it. So I because of some issues where I missed some meetings, some health issues, where I missed some meetings, last I heard about this was last Tuesday. And I have not had time to fully analyze it. Because it's not budgeted, I'm going to not vote for it today. I will either abstain or vote no. I'm trying to debate which to do.
Commissioner Boyle?
When I first heard of this, when we first discussed it, Commissioner Borgeson, I was very interested, and I'm not necessarily one for surveys and things like this, but I did look into this extensively and did take a really hard look at it. And I think it's a very, very positive step to take. And I do think, I am also a budget hawk. When it's not budgeted, I always bring that up and raise hell about it, but except unless it's something I want to do. But I do think this is a good move, and it does allow us to really get involved in it. And so I'll just close my comments by saying I thank you for bringing this to us, and I intend to support this enthusiastically. Thank you.
Thank you. No other questions and comments? There has been a motion and a second. Please, Commissioner Rogers.
I just want to add one more thing on this. I've seen this a couple of times over the years, and it probably, in some shape or form, and I don't know if we were quite there yet, but I think it would be hard to admit that, it's said a lot of times that, you need to run government like a business. I don't believe that's line by line true, but I do think there's some principles that are there. And I think one of the biggest principles is you can't deny now that a lot of things are data-driven baseline-wise, and we have a lot of stuff here that I think we need to be able to exercise. And I think this is a beginning step, and it's going to be something that we have to constantly get into to be able to take the intelligence that we have and make it work. So that's why I'm comfortable with it. No, and let me be clear, I'm not saying we are a business, but there are principles that need to be there. And whether you're in Baltimore and you're using CompStats, whether you are here in our own police department, and Baltimore and you're using city stats here in our police department and you're using CompStats to fight crime. I think the information analysis part has been there, and I think we're probably truthfully a little bit behind at it. And this puts us in the round. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Kraft?
Yeah, and I want to make clear that I'm not necessarily against it. I just haven't had time to research it. When I had my business and I have my website, I study the analytics very carefully. And I can spend so much time studying the analytics that it starts to make sense, and sometimes it starts to make nonsense. As I said, I have not had time to delve into it. I'm glad that Mike has. I feel more comfortable about this and a lot of other things we've done, but I still think I should rightfully abstain at this time.
Okay, with that, no other lights. Please vote.
Commissioner Kavanaugh? Motion passes. Commissioner Kraft and Kavanaugh abstaining. All other commissioners voting yes.
Mr. Clerk? Madam Chair, when a person abstains, do we have to give a reason under any rules?
The commissioner, this is item D under voting. Rule 6 voting, item D. If a commissioner elects to abstain on any item, they shall state their reason for abstaining. The commissioner who abstains but is not legally required to abstain, i.e. actual conflict of interest, shall count towards the quorum requirement.
Could I ask, if that's the rule, I'd like us to follow it if that is the rule. So whoever abstained, if they please state the reason, I'd appreciate it.
Commissioner Kraft did, and
yeah, and I believe I stated in my argument the reason.
Right. You did.
Commissioner Kavanaugh, would you like to?
No, I'm not sure this is a good expenditure.
Thank you very much for explaining your position. Thank you.
With that, we have one other item under Human Resources, and that's a discussion and action on the sheriff pay increase. And that is...
Let's pay him because he's got a gun.
And again, this is just correcting some of the numbers that were incorrect on last week's resolution.
Do we have to have a hearing or anything?
No,
I'll just make a motion and we correct that. I think we need to do that.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Duda. Commissioner Duda?
I don't mean to belabor. We simply, the resolution had dollar amounts in there. When we substituted a percentage amount, it screwed up years 3 and 4. Yep. This is exactly what we tried to do a week ago, except we didn't word it correctly a week ago. So this is no different than what we already attempted to do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Rogers?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Since this is in the salary realm, I strategically waited to now because of the last topic, but let me be clear and be on record. The conversations that we've had, not only with this salary, our salary, and everybody else's salary, have been strategic. Now, I'll take my hit for this vote, and I voted for it during election season.
Yep.
And I have no argument. I've said it to the paper, I said it to the editorial board, and stated my case factually why it should be there. But let me be clear, let me be the third person on record. Commissioner Kavanaugh, you did bring this up, and you will hold supported in it. And I'll go to my dying days that I think we need to be full-time. And I'll go to the end thinking that we are terribly understaffed. But the effort was to bring us up to par, and it's based on NACO, Nebraska Association of County Standards. And I've never been one to think, you know, you can get paid, you can get paid, or you cannot get paid. If you don't have the fire for the belly in this job, pay will not make you do it. So let's just be sure the idea was planned, at least from our point of view, and with everybody, is to get everybody up to par. That's why A lot of us who felt that that was there took the hit to bring it there, and that's why you'll probably never see anything like that again. Now it's at the 4% increase to maintain it. So I'll take my share in it. You should take your share in the fact that you did agree to that path going forward. Thank you.
Commissioner Kavanaugh, thank you.
I absolutely voted for that, and I have explained why I did. I didn't bring it up. You did. You referenced the NACO standard. You brought the comparables, and you proposed to entertain the idea of making it a full-time position. I don't have any problems with that. It's just a restatement of the record as it occurred. I voted for it. I thought it was appropriate then. I think it's appropriate now. And I voted against the proposal today for the same reason. I think that what we're looking at here is a bad system of determining compensation that swings wildly from 0% to 15% to get to an average of 2 to 3%. And what I'm saying is, instead of having these wild swings all the time, that we should institute a policy that does what the business world does in terms of adequate compensation. And if we did that, maybe we could have everybody on the same page instead of people, taking positions that maybe they're not comfortable with, or taking positions against a pay raise that they ultimately then take and put in their pocket. I mean, I'm willing to stand by my votes then. I'm willing to stand by my vote today. But, you brought this up. You provided the comparables. You provided the NACO examples, and you voted for it. I don't see why you should have any problem with that. I don't have any problem with my position.
Commissioner Boyle?
Okay, kids, let me try to let me make a couple comments here. I appreciate the points of view. One of the nice things about this board has been that when we argue, we get over it, which is really important, and I've observed that. It wasn't that way in the beginning. Commissioner Duda and I used to duke it out pretty regularly, and most of the time he won. But anyway, I think there's a great deal of agreement on this board on important issues. We have such big things with mental illness looming and corrections problems. We're going to hear from the director shortly. And I just want to mention a couple things. Before I made this decision, I did make some phone calls, and I spoke to the folks at NACO, and it's my understanding that they do not. I think they touched our salary years ago and put us on a scale with other counties, and it went off the map, and they said, we're not touching this, because I think it would come back with a number that would be shocking. So they don't even bother. They don't do ours. We're the only county that NACO does not compute what the salaries ought to be for commissioners. That's it. Well, I called and I spoke to Elaine, who's a very competent person with NACO, and I talked to her briefly about it. I didn't ask her to touch that rail because I know that she's not going to go there. But she did give me some figures, and what Mr. Kavanaugh cited are exactly the figures she gave me. And particularly if we're doing comparisons, which is what we do with employees across the board, Lancaster is at $45,700 with, I believe, a cost of living looming, which will put them very close to us. They have 230,000 fewer residents than we do. They work hard. We're friends of theirs, and we get along. We have basically the same issues. But when you start comparing, the number of residents and so forth that are represented, we have more. As far as the swinging, I think this brings it to an end. I'll take responsibility for doing that swinging, because I did on several occasions recommend no increase, and it was very damaging and it was very foolish. And I was hoping, and I told Mr. Burbach at the World Herald, I was hoping it was set tell the unions and everybody else and the employees that this is where, look what we're doing, maybe you should come close, which they didn't. They don't have to. They do comparables with all these counties and around, and they come up with figures, and it's tough to dispute it. We have an excellent labor guy who says, this is what it is, and, he does a great job, and we have to buy into it, or else we're going to be at the CIR and probably lose. So I'm justifying it that way. And the other thing is that I was kidding Mr. Burbach, and I said, I need, it's actually about close to $40, a little over $40 a meeting is what this comes out to do. and that's before taxes. So I have to save, it's going to be about $24, $25 a meeting, and so I have to save about 5 meetings' salaries to buy my 7-day subscription to the Omaha World Herald.
But it's worth it.
Told you, Burbach.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Stop picking on this.
We do have a motion in a second.
We did, okay, I already, all right, please vote. No, we hadn't voted yet. Yeah, this is the sheriff. We got a little bit off course, but that's okay. That's all right.
The sheriff's salary.
Executive session.
Just to correct.
Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Wow, I don't know what to do.
Mr. Kavanaugh.
Vote.
Sheriff?
Sorry?
Vote.
On the sheriff's?
Motion passes unanimously.
And there is no need for executive session today, so do we? Oh, corrections, yes, sorry. Well, we need to adjourn from this and then go into the Board of Corrections. So is there a motion to adjourn the Board of Commissioners? Please vote.
So if we vote no, we can just go home.
Then you, yeah, that's right.
$40 a meeting.
Commissioner Rogers. Motion passes unanimously.
And now do we have a motion, or now we will go to the agenda for the Douglas County Board of Corrections. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Boyle. Yes. Commissioner Kavanaugh.
Yes.
Commissioner Duda.
Here.
Commissioner Kraft. Yes. Commissioner Morgan. Commissioner Rogers. Yes. Madam Chair.
Yes. Board of Corrections, item 1, approval of the minutes of the Board of Corrections meeting held Tuesday, November 21st, 2017. Is there a second? Motion by Commissioner Boyle, seconded by Commissioner Rogers. Please vote.
Motion passes. Commissioner Morgan is absent. All other commissioners voting yes.
Citizen comments. Is there anyone in the chamber wishing to speak to the Board of Corrections about an item not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move to the report from the Director of Corrections. Good morning, Mark.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Yeah, before you, monthly report for November 2017. Page 1, enclosure 1. We are several months into the fiscal year, and we are under budget, which is good news. It's deep into the fiscal year. Enclosure number 2, community corrections. Several Douglas County personnel participated in the sequential intercept mapping workshop that was hosted by Region 6. The purpose of this process is to develop options for redirecting mentally ill individuals away from incarceration and into appropriate services at multiple points throughout the criminal justice process. I think that meeting was well attended, and with some good notes for progressive movement out of that. Douglas County and Sarpy County each approved an interlocal agreement to allow for Sarpy County inmates to be placed in the Reentry Assistance Program in Douglas County. Those placements are expected to begin this month of December. Also, corrections staff met with staff from U-Turn, an organization whose mission it is to reduce violence among young adults. We're planning on integrating resources of U-Turn as we begin to develop programs designed for youthful offenders in Douglas County. So it's another U-Turn's a violence intervention program, and they're going to be able to work with our young people in our population, 18 and older. With regard to the 24/7 alcohol sobriety program, there were 48 new admissions. The average daily participation number peaked at 135. I think we had 137 the last day or two. So those numbers continue to climb with the addition of the drug testing program. There were 2,449 breath tests completed last month. 5 of those tests were positive for alcohol use. There were 7 no-shows for testing, and the overall compliance for breath testing was 99.5%. So that program continues to go well. In addition, 32 individuals were monitored for a total of 743 days of SCRAM monitoring. There were 0 no-shows, no tampering violations, 2 alcohol violations, and the overall SCRAM compliance rate was 99.8%. There were 6 positive drug test violations and 8 positive drug patch violations, and there were 10 no-shows for testing. Work release admitted 40 individuals last month, and those individuals contributed 200 hours of community service to various public and private charitable organizations. House arrest admitted 63 individuals last month. Reentry Assistance Program, or RAP, admitted 28 individuals last month, and 1 individual achieved their GED. Corrections programs or in-house programs admitted 83 individuals last month. With regard to pretrial services, 12 individuals were referred for priority prosecution, and 174 bed days were saved. 365 individuals were placed on pretrial release last month, and there were 1,082 individuals monitored on pretrial last month. With regard to inclusion number 4, with the personnel, officers from new hire class 17-3 are assigned and working on their own. New hire class 17-4 graduated last week, Friday, December 1st. They are in their second week of field training officer program, and applications are being reviewed for new hire class 18-1, which we hope to set in January. So we keep going back to back to back new hire classes, and we'll continue to do so for the foreseeable future as our population continues to rise and does not retreat, actually. Enclosure number 5, speaking of population, at 1,618 admissions last month, 1,562 releases last month. Our high count was 1,362. Our low count was 1,223. Our ADP was about 1,300. Our custodial sanctioned bed days is 229. Our U.S. Marshal population was up. Our ICE population was up. Felony and misdemeanor pretrial populations decreased a bit, and misdemeanor pretrial populations, the female population decreased a bit. However, still remains 3 female housing units open. Intake screenings for medical, 1,373. H&Ps or health and physical, 431. There were 402 discharge referrals last month. With respect to mental health, enclosure number 7, initial psychiatric assessments are 139. There were initial mental health placements, 148. Mental health infirmary placements are 43. Referrals to community-based mental health services, outpatient psych are 6. Mental health and co-occurring disorder treatment programs, 130. Mental health therapy, there were 7. And there was 1 long-term psychiatric placement. So if you turn to the charts that I provided with respect to Douglas County Department of Corrections Mental Health Services, you can see that our mental health assessments and evened out last month. And remember, our mental health numbers are lagging a month just based on the way we calculate them. But you turn to mental health diagnosis and psychiatric meds, you still see our mental health numbers continue to rise. And even in the fall, they were higher than what they were in the summer as well. Looking at our population history and flipping to our homeless history too, we're still running about 230, 240 homeless in custody. Now our homeless number ebbed just a little bit last month, but we expect with the colder weather that number to rise as well. Are there questions?
I just wanted to commend you for your service last week at the Administrative Services Committee tour of the Correction Center. I think that was one of the best examples of displaying what we are doing with the public safety bond upgrades to the Douglas County Correction Center. And I want to thank you for making it possible for the media to get an inside view of actually what we're doing down there. I think it was particularly important in terms of the visual effect that the electronic media was able to take away in terms of the ability for our corrections staff now to serve the population there by being able to see better, and I just wanted to thank you for making that possible. It's not always easy to get camera crews inside and out of a secure facility, but you did a great job and your staff did a great job, and I thought it was a great opportunity for the community to see in living color what we're doing at the Correction Center with our public safety bond. I also wanted to commend you for your administrative ability to move the population around an active construction site. And I know that's not an easy thing to do, particularly when you're running at capacity or near capacity all the time. But it seems that you have accomplished this very difficult task without any significant disruption in either the safety or the security of the staff or the inmates. And thank you. I commend you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're full. And going into the summer, what seems like summer, but going into the winter with the warmer weather, we're running over 1,300 the last few days. The weekend we hit 1,300. I mean, it's almost Christmas. So we got our housing unit closed because of the construction. So it's busy. It's a lot going on.
Commissioner Boyle?
Yes, thank you very much for the report. I do have a couple of questions. I'm curious about the 24/7 program. The participants are there because of a judge, aren't they? A judge ordered them to do this?
Yes, I'm going to have Mr. Myers come down.
Okay.
He's got the day-to-day responsibility for the administration of that program.
Good morning, Commissioners. Mike Myers, the
Morning.
Community
Hi, Mike.
Corrections Manager.
My question is, the participants in the 24/7 program are there because the judge said so, right?
Correct. It is voluntary, but
Voluntary on whose part?
on the participants'
Oh,
part.
really? Okay.
The judge asks them if they would prefer that option
Okay.
over a higher bond and remaining in custody.
Okay, that's kind of an incentive. Let me ask you, do we have quite a few judges participating? I'm concerned because some of the other programs I've seen, we have one judge who just about does it every time somebody's in front of him on something, and then other judges don't use the United Way program at all. And I'm curious if that's happening here.
The buy-in has been pretty consistent among the judges.
Okay.
There are some who use it more than others, and I think that's probably to be expected based on their own perspectives. But for the most part, I would say the vast majority of the judges use it fairly consistently.
Okay, well, I won't belabor this, but I'll talk to you further about this, but I would like to consider having corrections added at a meeting of the judges. Is it primarily county or is it district judges?
Most of the time the cases begin with a county court
Right.
judge placing the person on it in courtroom 50 over at the jail.
Okay.
And then that decision is usually affirmed a few weeks later when the case is transferred to district court.
Okay.
And we do have occasionally where people were not placed on it by a county court judge, that when the case does make it to district court, that judge will place them on it.
Okay, well, I don't mean to get my nose into it. You're doing a terrific job, but I am curious if there's something we can do to help, and maybe it's face-to-face with the judges. If you think that's a bad idea, I know you'll tell me. But I'll contact you through your chief guy there,
All right.
and we'll get together and discuss this. I appreciate that. You're doing a terrific job. You really are. That's why I'm so curious about who's referring who. Thank you. Doctor, I'd like to ask you about, are we having any luck getting money from the state on LB 605? I know it's very difficult to try to figure out who's what and where and what the expenses are and what qualifies. Has anybody had any headway that you know of, you or other counties?
There are some funds available. We've taken a look at had a meeting with the grant writer for the county to take a look at what those requirements are again, and we're going to try to pursue some of those funds.
Okay, we may want to consider clarifying legislation, because it is one of the mysteries of life, how this money is supposed to be how it's supposed to be obtained. And it sounded like a good deal for the state, but we aren't getting paid very much, and we have a lot more people in there that we wouldn't have had before. So I'd like to get information on that, and possibly we'll talk to some senators about clarifying the language so that that money becomes accessible, because it's pretty unfair. Then I want to ask about let's see, the inmate telephones, that was been a subject of the ACLU, and I guess, are we being sued by the ACLU?
No, not that I know of.
Okay. Well, I want to ask, we've had conversations about this before, and I describe myself as the resident bleeding heart, and I still am on this issue too. But I understand I have to deal with reality, and I'm not going to try to stop what's going on. But I think you made a terrific case in a conversation with me about this inmate payphone money. First of all, I guess I'd like to ask you to, first of all, clarify that what happens, how telephone calls are free when people are first brought into the facility. Would you talk about that?
Sure. The phones that inmates have access to in the admissions area, those are free calls. So if they're down there for an hour, if they're down there for 2 hours before they go up, those calls are free. The attorney calls are always free.
And you want them to call family and friends
Yes.
and all this sort of thing and let them know where they are, call an attorney, all these things. And
Sure, and those calls down in admissions are free, unlimited. So I think that's important once they arrive at our place, that they have the opportunity to make those free calls to let people know where they're at.
Okay. And then, of course, calls to attorneys are no charge.
That's correct.
That's confidential between the caller and the attorney, correct?
That's correct also.
Okay. And there's no restrictions on that whatsoever?
No, sir.
Okay. And the only time it gets involved is when, and I don't like this, but that's the way life is, where the calls are made to family and so forth, and there is a charge. And what are we charging per minute?
They're charging 13 cents.
13 cents?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's quite a bit lower than what we read about and what does take place, particularly at some of the prisons around the country. We're not a prison, but in jails and so forth, I know it's a lot higher. So I think that's reasonable, although I don't really like that even, but that's how I am. But I understand that has to happen. I appreciate that clarification, because the money that does come in, and I hate to ask you off the top of your head, but what is that figure approximately that comes into the correction facility budget because of this?
I don't have that number with me.
Okay. Well, I know it was pretty high.
Yes.
It was around $600,000 or $700,000, I believe. And when you told me about that, you went on to explain what that money goes for. Would you recap? Would you tell us again what that is?
Sure. A lot of that money provides the program opportunities for our inmates coming into the facility. And I've stood before you on many occasions to discuss the type of programming that we are able to provide in terms of opportunities for successful reentry, successful rehabilitation, vocational training, GED testing, and the money that comes in as a result of that commission off the telephone calls is utilized to support those programs. And my concern is, in the absence of the programs that we do provide for the incoming inmate population, then we're not able to address issues related to reoffending and victimization in our community. I think recidivism is a really important concern for us. It's one of our mission-focused areas that we really go after. The programs that Mike talks about and has oversight of are the recipient of those funds, and in the absence of the money to prepare those programs and get them to the level that we want them to be, I don't know that we would be successful in terms of what we're able to do with our inmate population. And that's not only community corrections, but that's in-house programs as well, particularly the GED program, COG-based programs. And Mike could list off any number of programs that are the recipient of those programs. And again, we talk about public safety. Our responsibility, insofar as public safety is concerned, is to house people in our facility, but it goes further than that. We're not just a warehouse, but we are also responsible, I think, this is me, to return that person to the community better than what they were when they came in. If we don't do it, who's going to do it?
That's right. Well, after listening to you, and you've told me this before, and I do appreciate what you've done is you've taken what appears to be a program that's very penalizing, having to pay to use a telephone. When it turns out it's only 13 cents a minute, although that could be a hardship. But still, turning that program of 13 cents a minute into a $600,000 benefit for the people who are using the telephones. I mean, that's a really good thing. And if we don't have those fees, then you're going to have to come here, and we're going to have to go to the state, and they're not going to pay us anything. So this is, I mean, it sounds really like you've turned something that was kind of a lemon into some lemonade, and I appreciate that a lot. And this is not an accident. This is your attitude, and it's how you are. So I really appreciate that. And
Thank you.
I appreciate the summary, too, because it helps put this in perspective.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Those are my questions and comments. Thank you very much, Dr. Foxall.
Thank you. Commissioner Kraft?
Couple of quick ones, at least I hope they're quick. What do you mean by custodial sanctioned bed days?
That's part of LB 605. Those
Okay.
are,
That you can explain it further, but now it makes sense to me.
okay,
Okay. And you mentioned the U-turn program.
yes.
And you're coordinating that with Brad Alexander at the youth center?
U-turn is working with Brad Alexander for youth.
U-turn
Center
is
also,
working
yes.
with them, okay. And in closure number 2, are we experiencing positive long-term results from the 24/7 sobriety program?
Commissioner, we have not engaged in a formal scientific evaluation, but I have had our staff run the results of people who have been both on and off of the program for at least a year. In other words, they've completed the program more than a year prior to us analyzing their criminal records. And we do have some encouraging numbers. Unfortunately, I can't cite them to you exactly off the top of my head this morning. But what I can tell you is our numbers were very consistent with the scientific evaluations of 24/7 programs in other states, particularly South Dakota, where it's been widely used for about 15 years now. And it basically results into a DUI recidivism rate that's roughly half of what would be expected without this sort of intervention.
Good. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Rogers?
Thank you, Chair. Mark, and Mike, I wanted to just reiterate to the board the conversation that we had about the pretrial piece to kind of keep you all updated. So in October, was Dr. Foxall, Mike Meyer, Mike Rupiper, and I forget the other gentleman's name. It's the first time I met him. Tyrone Harper. That's the team that makes up our pre-trial team to some degree. And so we met. What Mike laid out to me is basically this is the heart of it. We have a series of programs. What they're in the process of doing is organizing those programs, and I guess for lack of a better term, kind of progressing sanction grid. And they're basing this model off a model in Denver and how they do pretrial based on what's going on there. We happen to have this meeting like about late October, and right after that meeting is when I went to the pretrial Justice Institute's board meeting. And I talked this over with a few people, and they're in a complete agreement on how Mike and the team are going about it, and they seem to have a lot of confidence in that Denver model and what they've been able to do pretrial-wise. So they need a little time to kind of put that together, presentation. My hope is sometime here, early next year, they can present this to the board and lay out where they want to go and what numbers implications may be there with that. But also, Commissioner Boyle, you mentioned the judges to some degree, and I think there's a meeting that they'll have to have with the judges, and I think a reasonable amount of us too to have in that respect too when they put this out, to kind of ask the judges to have a little faith and confidence in this, to let us go and use the best practice to try to reduce those pretrial numbers that are there, and hopefully if that's the case, that would reduce some of the pressure in the facility. So am I off in any? Okay, so I just want everybody to know that's where they're at with that.
Commissioner Boyle? Thank you. Commissioner Boyle?
I was on. You've made me think of something. What would happen? I've brought this up before, and it is a little bit off the wall, but I think it's done in some jurisdictions. What would happen if, sometimes, and I don't blame them, judges are. We've seen things happen in court where decisions end up in bad results, and lots of times, judges are only human. And so sometimes I think what they do is they will set excessive bail perhaps, or high bail when it's not warranted. When you think of the purpose of bail, they'll do things that frankly protect themselves, which I guess I can't totally say I blame them. Not necessarily in Douglas County, but we've seen it nationally, and I'm not going to talk about what's happened here. We've had some problems with people who were undocumented doing things. So anyhow, I guess what I'm driving at is I wonder whether we should explore at least the possibility of judges sentencing individuals to the correction facility, forgetting about setting aside what they think the punishment should be, but saying these are experts in these cases, if these are the people who know what to do, should we simply sentence them to corrections? And what that does, in California, there are some counties, I brought this up before, where judges will sentence people to people who are guilty of an offense to a 5-person board, and they will decide what the punishment is. And that's led to some pretty unique situations. I brought up before about a woman who was involved in an accident that killed 3 men, and she was raking a lawn. Well, she had a PhD, and it was circumstances that are not going to happen again. Everybody was intoxicated, and her boss threw the keys to her, and she drove and killed 3 people. Well, she's not going to do that again. And what it does, it insulates the judge from criticism. He or she is not the person who sentenced someone who killed 3 people to raking a lawn. This judge sentenced that person to a 5-person panel. They're the ones who made that decision. Well, I wonder whether there's any need for us to do this here. Maybe there isn't. But I wonder whether we would get more participation from the judges if there was really no risk in sentencing these offenders to the correction facility and let them make the decision, let them bear the responsibility for the sentence. Just something to plant in our heads. I think I'd like to see it explored.
Can I respond?
Commissioner Rogers?
I'm not a lawyer, even though I yearn to be one, and I'm one of the few people that say that publicly.
You're a damn good one.
I'm one of the few people who say that publicly. I don't know. I know, but for this piece to some degree, I don't know if we've ever presented them with anything to give them some trust in. How we've kind of been doing it is not really laid out. My hope is when Mike and those guys lay this grid down,
okay,
we have something proven best practice that they can go about doing it. It's going to be a sell for them to trust it, but my gut is, from the conversations I've had with them, they're going to have to do a little persuasion in getting the judges to trust the recommendations that they give them from this tool.
Okay.
I think they would probably have a great pushback in giving that judicial authority over to some panel to some degree. But I do think, there's probably 2 phases of conversation, even though we've reached out with a letter. I think there's probably, my gut tells me an initial conversation probably with Havocan about saying to him, this is what we're about to do. We hope we can have your support. And then saying it locally to the judges and asking them to buy in. And I think that may be the best way here, because we've just never presented them the tool, the mechanism to make the decision. And I think if they go through this in the right way and this lays out, I think some things will be obvious that the real thing is the risk of them coming to court, and we have enough tools to be able to make sure that people return back in a safe manner.
Thank you. One last thing I wanted to ask is, and I alerted Patrick to this too, that and you may, whichever one of you wants to comment, we did have some injuries not too long ago at corrections. I'm very much interested in having this be public, because when we have employees who work in risky positions, I do like to acknowledge it, not necessarily their name, not necessarily anything as something would be violating HIPAA or anything like that, but I would like the people who are listening to us know that we do have employees who are injured on the job. We have a psychiatric unit, we have a hospital, a similar facility at 42nd Street, and then of course we have this facility, and we have sheriff's deputies as well that are injured occasionally. I do like to have that be public and on the record, so I don't know if Patrick wants to bring it up, or if you, Doctor, want to talk about what's happened in the last month over at the facility.
I think you can just talk in generalities about.
Oh yeah.
Things, yeah.
Sure, we did have several staff receive some minor injuries in contact with inmates last month, and I reported those up so that you could be aware of those. Those are something that we continue to monitor, but we have it's a dangerous job.
Right. Okay, well, it's part of the job. And Commissioner Borgerson?
Well, I think the last conversation we had was that maybe during part of your report, we would be able, on that monthly basis, to just state, again, keeping us updated throughout, that's great, but then there would just be a summary of, 2 assaults on correctional officers or something like that within the report, and everybody
Yeah,
thought that would be a good
That'd be helpful.
generality, I guess.
Right. And whether they're hospitalized, whether they're treated and released and so
He
forth.
could go a little bit more into
that'd be
depth.
great.
Add that to my monthly report.
Okay, good deal. I just want to take a moment to thank you for your professional attitude. You have really, it travels through the entire operation, Dr. Foxall, and it, Mike, you as well. Again, a couple more people that are really doing a terrific job. It's amazing. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Mark, can you tell me how many individuals are sitting out their bonds over there?
In pretrial or in secure custody?
All.
I can get that to you today.
And would there be an amount you could attach to that?
I believe I can put something together. An aggregate amount or disaggregated?
Aggregate. Here's why I'm asking, is because what is it costing us to have those individuals do that at our cost per day? So if the bond is I don't know, say $10,000, just
$1,000, 10%.
$1,000. So then what's our cost per day to have that person sitting there, and how many of those are?
A little less than $95 a day.
Okay.
Dollars a day.
I just want to see what it looks like.
Sure.
And what that cost is to us.
I can give you something preliminarily today, and then we can work on that other piece, and I can get that to you in the next day or two.
That's fine. That's fine.
Sure.
Okay. Nothing else for the good of the cause? Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Sorry. Please vote.
Motion passes. All present voting yes.
I want to thank my driver, Patrick Bloomingdale.
I'm his bodyguard.
Yeah, bodyguard too. I think he's loaded. I think he's got a gun. I'm not sure. Anyway, thanks a lot, Patrick, and